box office figure. Cobb was growing old when Ruth's home run output had the country going crazy. Ruth was all power, and Cobb was mostly science, with some power added. They broke fairly even in statistics. Ty Cobb's .367 lifetime batting average is still the best ever recorded, whereas Babe averaged .342. Cobb remains tops today in runs scored with 2,244 to Babe's 2,174. Ruth edged Cobb in slugging average, runs batted in, and by far in homers. So the spoils were fairly even. Which of them was the greatest player of all time? Who contributed most to his team? They'll be arguing that one well into the next century. I guess you know whom I favor. The one they never called a rattlesnake in the dugouts, the one with a big belly. But what a wonderful player was the Detroit Tiger, as you'll learn in reading this book by a savvy baseball writer, Al Stump, who knew Ty Cobb well. Editor's note: Jimmy Reese, who wrote this foreword early in 1994, died while this book was in the final stages of production in July 1994. Preface. Ty Cobb always was a taciturn man. He grew more and more reclusive with advancing age, and upon reaching 73 in 1960, he was holed up in a pair of dreary homes worth $5 million in Atherton, California, and at Lake Tahoe, Nevada. Baseball's greatest, most thoroughly disliked player of the century lived without electric lights, candles only in one of his hideouts, and without telephone service, in both. The multimillionaire had been estranged from his 5 children decades earlier. 2 wives had charged extreme cruelty in divorces, each deposing that the Georgia peach was uncontrollable when crossed or drunk, or whenever he was reminded of how he had regularly bloodied opponents with his spikes. Cobb's kiss, as one victim, Frank Home Run Baker, called his slashing. Cobb chose me to ghostwrite his memoirs early in 1960, largely on the recommendation of New York editor, biographer, and Hollywood screenwriter Gene Fowler, and of Grantland Rice, dean of sports writers. He had fired several previous ghosts who had displeased him in one way or another. Various other autobiographical projects had fallen through. As a U.S. Navy combat correspondent in World War II, I had met General Douglas MacArthur. "Take the writing job," counseled MacArthur, an old West Point shortstop, who was Cobb's #1 fan and close friend. "The world has known only one like him." So began a turbulent period of close to 1 year with the most brilliant player who ever lived. Cobb's competitiveness and truculence remain unmatched in American sport. His compulsion to win was awesome. As Paul Gallico wrote, "There was a burning rage in Ty Cobb never far from the surface. He brought a fury, cruelty, and a viciousness heretofore unencountered even in the roughest kind of play." Gallico, a longtime sports editor at the New York Daily News, who closely studied Cobb in his late career, felt that Cobb's weird conduct, both on and off the field, could have been signs of significant mental illness. It was to be expected that a man as abidingly competitive as Cobb, as emotionally wrapped up in what his career was and wasn't, would not be able to maintain a detached objectivity about that career. 2. The memories of elderly men are notoriously fallible. Therefore, his version of long-ago events is not to be taken as unvarnished fact, although his recall was often striking, so much as an index of the way he saw things as having happened. What resulted from our collaboration was My Life in Baseball, The True Record, which was finished and at the publishers before Cobb died in July of 1961. We first conceived the book in January of 1960, traveling together to various parts of the country, including New York, Detroit, Georgia, Arizona, his home in Atherton, California, his lodge at Lake Tahoe,